Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. I thought I would sit down and do another video for you guys and gals. Let me get a sip of my water first. Get my beautiful radio voice for you, and let's talk about this. All right, we need to talk a little bit about proximity to training failure, volume, how it all relates, and just kind of put it in perspective, because we have to look at it's both the bit of experimental data we have as well as anecdotal experience in the real world. And here's the thing that people need to understand. There's the practical aspect, and then there is the theoretical aspect. Obviously, when it comes to training to actual failure, and we need to understand, let's define muscle failure the way researchers do. Momentary muscle failure. What does that mean? It means when performing an exercise with no breaks, like I'm going to rest 3 seconds and then try to get another rep, the weight simply stops moving. Okay, that's it. Either you simply cannot complete the rep without cheating. Usually the rep before that, the bar slows down. So when you're bench pressing, right, like we have a good cadence and then it grinds slow. It takes an extra second or two sometimes to lock that rep. That's when you know you're probably going to fail the next rep unless you cheat and grind and shift under it. Okay. So from a practical perspective, obviously some exercises, it's just simply not practical. Anything you can get pinned under, it's just generally not a good idea to take to muscle failure. And forget all this nonsense about, that's not true failure. You could do whatever. It's like, stop. We're talking about what we know in a lab. Okay, because anything beyond that, probably not beneficial. Okay, that's a separate topic in and of itself, but going beyond failure probably doesn't cause any muscle growth. The reason is it's just beating up recovery, and here's what you need to understand. People say, but there's still some fibers left. No, you're just hitting the easier stuff. So here's what I mean. If you're doing a bicep curl to failure, right, or curling to failure, and then you can't get one more, right? Guys are like, well, you could do partials at the bottom. Well, because they're easier, okay? You've already fatigued the highest threshold muscle fibers, the ones with the most growth potential. Because keep in mind, as you go up the rate coding chain, the slowest twitch fibers have the least potential for growth, okay? They have the least potential for growth. And as we get bigger over time, they tend to max out. Meaning, so what ends up happening, one of the reasons muscle growth really slows over time is that not all muscle fibers at any given hormone profile, meaning the amount of stuff in your body, which for most people is what you're producing naturally, unless you're adding stuff, and that declines over time as you get older. Okay? What you find is that the slower twitch fibers max out much sooner in your training career, and so you have fewer and fewer fibers that can really make substantial gains, unless you add stuff. Okay, in which case then those other fibers can get some extra growth. So that seems to be what the data seems to suggest. So what you find is that once you hit failure, you've already hit the highest threshold fibers, and they won't fire again because they have limited use. They can only really do a few reps. And then they're done. They're too fatigued. You've created so much tension in them that they're finished. And so you need easier reps to do it. So that's why if you rest a few seconds, you can do another rep or two. But keep in mind, you were able to move that weight without hitting the upper threshold fibers. If it's an 8 or a 10 or a 12 rep set, those first few reps were easy, right? You didn't even get to those upper threshold fibers. So given a little bit of rest, the more endurance fibers can do some more reps. They're not capable of much growth. So you see where we're going, and it's the same when you do the little partials. No, it's just easier. So therefore you're back to doing those easier fibers that can handle it again, because there's less mechanical tension on the muscle, okay? Because you're not doing the hardest parts of the range of motion anymore. Or you're doing a lighter weight because someone's helping you do forced reps or whatever. It's probably not causing much growth, if anything, but it is beating you up and fatiguing you. So we know that proximity to failure matters, meaning if you get really close to muscle failure, it probably causes the most muscle growth. And if you're further away from failure, this is where we get into the topics of volume. This is one thing I said of like why I felt when I was doing 20 sets a week recently for a little while for each muscle, and then my weaklings getting more. I got to the point where I'm like, I feel like I'm getting lazy in my training because I'm saving too many reps so that I can actually get all 5 sets of 2 exercises for every muscle, every workout, because again, let's say I was doing 5 sets of flat bench, 5 sets of incline twice a week, right? So 10 total sets of each over 2 workouts. Well, I was getting lazy. The same thing with all my movements. I was getting further from failure because I wanted to get through the workout. It was making me lazy. So, or was I getting less total quality reps? Probably. So I'm like, let me cut this down to do about 12 really high quality sets. Let's take them real close to failure. Okay? But what do we mean in terms of doing that? Well, we can't always do that on every exercise. If we're really close to failure, can we get maximum growth with probably a little less volume? Absolutely. If we're further from failure, would you probably want to do more total sets? Absolutely. Because you do need some hard reps in there. And the number of hard reps that we do is absolutely is a factor in muscle growth. Okay, we know this. We've seen it in the real world. People who train really hard don't have to do quite as much training as people who don't. So, what are our practical limitations, though? You've got to look at the exercise. Do you really want to do an exercise that you can get pinned to actual failure? And I would say no. Those are movements you want to leave a rep in reserve. What do I mean? Bench press, incline bench, decline bench. You don't want to get pinned. You don't want it to hit the pins. How about a back squat? Yeah, absolutely. How about a skull crusher? Do you really want to hit? Be very careful. You don't want the bar to hit your face and bust your pretty face up. I mean, I'm too pretty to have a bar smashing me in the face. So there's that to think about. But what about other movements? Could you take a leg press? Maybe. I don't know. How about a leg press? How about a curl? Absolutely. How about a row? Oh yeah. How about a pull-up? Yeah, I think pull-ups to failure, you could totally do that. No problem. Why? Because there's no way to get injured. You just, once it hits failure, you just let go. Same thing. You can't curl anymore. Well, it just sticks down, right? You just set it on the floor. Row, you can do the same thing. Those are all good to failure. Right? Anything to where the bar is not going to smash you. You could probably take stuff just to failure. It's pretty safe. Other stuff, you probably want to just do 1 rep that's a little grindy and then stop. 1 rep from failure. It's usually a good idea. Again, if we're going to, so just use some common sense with these things. Stop and think about, do I actually want to get stapled under this weight? Is it okay or not? And know when you're close. You know when you guys have 1 rep left. When that rep slows down and you have to grind, you know that the next rep is going to be, if you make it, it's going to be real ugly. You're going to cheat. You're going to half rep it. You're going to bounce the bar off your chest and shift under it. You know that already. So for that, it's pretty straightforward. But, I would say that if your goal is to gain as much muscle as you can with the fewest sets possible, it's a good idea to take sets real close to failure or to failure, right? And you probably want reasonably long breaks between your sets so that you're recovered enough to put more effort into them. Doesn't mean you can't superset opposing muscles, but I'm talking for the same muscle, right? Same exercise. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.